Who here would like to learn a musical instrument? Anybody? Yes, love it. Who here learned the violin as a child? Anybody? Okay, I just want to remind you what that sounds like. I'm just going to take my violin here and put it up. Got that. I have 3 siblings. I grew up in South Carolina in a small town, and all 4 of us learned the violin. And for a portion of my childhood, we were homeschooled. So that means we were all home at the same time learning the violin. A few years later, I was about 13, and I sounded a little bit better. By that time, my sister and I were playing both piano and violin, which was a blessing and an opportunity for us. And we had a mission. My mother had given us a mission. We needed to create a trio, a 3-piece band. And we had me, I was the piano. We had my sister, you remember that. And we needed a cello, and we didn't have one. And she knew one. She knew a man who was a cellist, and she thought he might agree to it. He might do it. So we walked down the street on our mission. We had this mission decided by our wise mother, of course. And after the performance that we went to, we marched up to this stranger, 13 and 15. We marched up to the stranger and said, you know, would you play this music with us? So for the next year and a half, we rehearsed and performed with a man named Lucien de Groot. And he was a conductor of a symphony in South Carolina for almost 20 years. He was about 80 when we met him. And before that, he had played cello for an orchestra in Houston, Texas. Before that, he had conducted a radio symphony, so a symphony for radio, live radio broadcasts, in Johannesburg, in South Africa. And before that, he had trained in an entirely musical family in Belgium. So this is a man from Belgium, and his path, his cultural path, was from Brussels during World War II to Johannesburg, and bless his heart, to Houston, and then South Carolina, and thankfully to us. So that was an amazing cultural experience, all those experiences for him. And it was a cultural experience for us as young people, one of many that we were able to have, and I'm still having. And I learned from that a little bit each time, learned a little bit, widened my perspective, forced me to be a little bit more open. And that was cultural exchange in my daily life, brought to me, thank you, by the arts. So that's the place where I want you to start. My mission for you today, and my mission for myself, tomorrow, next week, is to seek that cultural experience in your daily life. Find a culture that's new to you, or a situation that might bring that culture to you, and discover it. I am Anna Smith. I am the Director of Cultural Exchange Programs at International Arts and Artists. International Arts and Artists is an organization here in DC, but with a wide reach. Our goal, our mission, for the past 16 years now, has been to increase cross-cultural understanding, so understanding among cultures, and exposure to the arts internationally. We do this through traveling art exhibitions from museum to museum around the world, educational programs that go with those exhibitions for young people, special events here in our Hillier Art Space here in Washington, visual and performing arts, and of course, the cultural exchange programs that I manage. Now, those programs are primarily travel. So young people coming from abroad and visiting the United States, and we encourage young Americans and people living in the United States to then travel abroad, buy a plane ticket, and go abroad and have cultural experiences abroad. But what about the experience that we can have right here in DC without leaving home? What about our daily lives? What about in your city, where you might live if you don't live here? There are so many organizations and arts opportunities that we've heard about today. Partnerships, people talking to each other. A lot about people talking to each other. I like that. Cultural exchange to me is courageously telling your own story and humbly listening to the stories of others, making connections. And that can happen today. It's been happening in the green room all day, all afternoon. It's wonderful. It can happen in your office, at the water cooler. It can happen at your school. When I was about 7 or 8, I dropped my retainer in the trash in the cafeteria in my elementary school in South Carolina. And one of the staff people who was working in the cafeteria, this guy ran the school. I asked him to help me find the retainer. And you can imagine what that means. And he let forth his reaction to this. He did help me. He was very gracious and helped me. But I didn't understand a word then because it was all in Gullah. And that was one of my very earliest exposures to cultures within an area. So we imagine South Carolina, but imagine the number of cultures within South Carolina. Now imagine the district, and imagine all of the different nations that are represented in the district. And then imagine how many cultures are in one nation. How many cultures might be out there in DC that you could discover through the arts. So my mission, again, for you and for me, is to go seek that cultural experience. Talk to people, talk to strangers, embarrass yourself like I'm doing today. Make connections. And a good way to do that, I understand that not everybody wants to say, before they've had their coffee, I'm going to go out and have a cultural experience today. You can have your coffee first. But you might be thinking, well, this isn't going to happen spontaneously. It's hard to make friends. It's hard to talk to strangers. But again, all day we've heard about the arts in Washington, and just imagine all the different cultures that come forth. That's what happens in the arts. It's not a new thing. I'm not the first person to say it. But start with the arts. Start with the arts. Go to an exhibition. Go to a concert. And then please, like my mother forced me to do, talk to the artists. You will enjoy it. You will make discoveries. You will keep on learning. You'll love it. Thank you so much.